morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Monday, the 6th day of November, year of our Lord 2017. Let's do after what happened yesterday, and our preparative of the day goes straight to the heart. Today is to work with your pastor to develop a church security plan. I've already commenced discussions with the pastor of my church. And you need to be doing the same thing. That's what really needs to happen. That's your prepper tip of the day. We're patiently waiting to agree with my friend Jimmy Ginsling. Jimmy is the CEO, the proprietor of Desert Eagle Shooters. That's deserteagleshooters.com. And Jimmy, good morning, sir.
Good morning, John. I got to say, yesterday morning at the gun show in Roswell, it was almost like some kind of a movie because it was just like on cue. My phone buzzed, and Teresa's buzzed, and other people's buzzed, and all of a sudden it was trying to think of the word. I haven't figured out what to use yet, but the entire mood in that gun show went from friends visiting friends and talking to customers and, light chatter and happy sounds to absolute silence in that show because everybody was looking at their phones, myself included, and running through my mind was, is this some kind of sick joke? And
Right.
I'd like to start this morning off, John, as we've done many, many times, with a prayer for everybody that's out there.
We need to do that. We need to do that. Please continue. Yes.
Father, we just come to you, and yesterday morning a group of your children were together, and they were cheerful. They were, excited about upcoming things and life in general. Seasons coming upon them, visiting families in the future, just everything that goes on in a normal small country church. And some individual eaten up with evil that Satan somehow, some time ago, got his claws in and just turned this person's heart so dark, walked into that church and just committed such an atrocity, Father. Father, the fact that it happened in a church is one thing that hurts so many people. The fact that it happened in the United States and it happened in Texas alone is just insult to injury. Father, John's tip of the day is just, it's profound. It's something that we look at today and people wonder, why didn't we do this last week? Why didn't we talk about this at the last church business meeting, 6 months ago? Father, we can look back in hindsight 2020 as much as we want. We'll never come up with an answer, Father. Politicians, law enforcement, they can all speculate. Only you know this man's heart, Father. Father, we just ask you to be with these people that have lost loved ones that have been affected by this. A community of 700 people, there's not going to be a single person there that's not affected. Father, we ask you to bless them. We ask you to touch their hearts. We ask you to give them peace. Father, the hardest thing that you can give them, and we know that some will reject it at first, but over time as their heart softens and their mind gets right, Father, we ask you to give them understanding. Father, we just praise you and we thank you. Be with the families and the people of that small town, of the church, of the friends and families that are scattered across the nation and possibly the world. But most of all, Father, we ask you to be with our nation. Father, our leaders, they look at themselves and they're bettering themselves. They care not about their constituents or the rest of the American people. Father, it is time for a true revival in this nation. Father, we just ask that you work with those, and you bring it up, and you bring it to fruition, Father. Father, we just praise you and we thank you on this Monday morning. We ask that information that we pass on will be good for those that need it. But most of all, Father, we ask that you be with that community in the state of Texas and our entire nation. In the holy, most precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we ask these things. Amen.
Amen. Well, Jimmy, it was for me. It was a matter of deja vu. I'm out of town, and I didn't go to my church yesterday, but I called up my pastor a couple of hours after the event. I said, Pastor, I'm looking at a picture of your church because it's so similar. The community I go to church in is about the same size as that town in Texas. The Baptist church I go to is about the same size. And the pastor of the church I go to has a 14-year-old daughter. So I think it's important for people to get together with their pastor and the deacons and to see if there's if the will exists for the pastor and the deacons of your church to commence a good, solid church security plan. And we're going to go over the outlines, Jimmy, you and I, of what that would consist of. The beginning point, of course, being the joint decision of the pastor and the deacons that they want to pursue that. The next step would be to talk to the congregation, of course, and find what volunteers they want to participate in the program, and then commence putting together a plan, which is going to begin with contacting the local sheriff or police, chief of police, whoever authority is in authority, and asking for assistance in training, and contacting the local paramedics for assistance in training, because you're going to want training in two areas, paramedic training and security training. So I would also suggest that everybody who's going to be armed get their concealed carry training, because it will be a structured class that will go over the basics. You won't come out of a concealed carry training class as an advanced student or an advanced security officer, but it's a good basic entry level. Wouldn't you agree, Jimmy?
Oh, yes, sir. And for us out here in the country like that, you're describing your church. Lakewood is a population of 12, and the little church that we have literally right across the street from us that Reese and I attended long before we ever moved into Lakewood proper, when we were still in the outlying areas. The parishioners that go there are not just made up of the few that live in Lakewood or the few that live at the RV camp down the road. The remainder of the parishioners are farmers and ranchers that live probably in a 10-mile radius. And the neighbors, I don't know if you've seen the story yet or not, about the neighbor that confronted him and did shoot him. It has been confirmed this morning that the neighbor that confronted him did shoot him. The guy jumped in his car and left. And the neighbor that shot him ran out, and there was an individual and his girlfriend on the way to church, and the stop sign in the intersection, that saw what was going on, and the Good Samaritan, the neighbor, ran up to him, explained to him what was going on. The driver told him to get in, and they chased the guy at speeds over 90 miles an hour, keep in contact with him, and while giving information to law enforcement, and he succumbed to his injuries and ran off the road and crashed and died right there.
I saw a reference. Go ahead.
Thank goodness we saved all the legal fees.
Well, I'd rather that he lived, actually, so he could be debriefed as to what was going on in his bizarre, crazy mind. But I also read reference that he had a hostage with him. The shooter had a hostage when he escaped. and that the good Samaritan, a plumber, by the way, he wanted to make sure that the hostage was safe and out of the way when they approached the vehicle, and the plumber did notice the body armor of the shooter, and apparently shot underneath the body armor to score a hit on the shooter.
Yeah, that's the hard part I'm having to sort this from all the other information. But then it goes back to we had Chuck with us a couple of weeks back. I guess it's been about probably a little over a month now. Talking about how their church security was set up. One covering the internal doors, at least one rover in the parking lot and stuff. I'm going to be getting in contact again with him today, and I'm going to talk to him about writing up a plan on that, what they use, and get it posted over to either the forum section with a link off the main page or whatever on the web page for other people to look at and to share. What did we say after the shooting in South Carolina, John? Wouldn't happen again.
Right. Well, it has, and it will. And I also read. So I read one article. I read twice to make sure I wasn't missing something. But one article said the shooter taught Sunday school at a different church someplace, despite the fact that he's an atheist, which is certainly counterintuitive. It's kind of a side note, really, in light of the magnitude of everything else. But in this age, and I think the one commonality, of course, we don't know very much about the shooter yet, except he was convicted of assaulting his wife and child and served a year in jail while he was in the Air Force. But I would bet even money that he had a prescription for psychotropic drugs and may have been enhancing the psychotropic prescription drugs with street drugs as well. We don't know that yet, but the one common denominator between almost all the mass shooters, except for the Muslims, is the prescription pharmaceutical products that have an adverse effect on your brain. But we shall see. Now, but the main topic, and I think we can spend 2 hours on this easily, Jimmy, is helping our listeners to develop a church security plan. That's where we need to be focused this morning instead of all these rabbit trails.
Yes, sir.
So you're going to have two groups of volunteers, first of all. One group of volunteers who will be the armed security force. Another group of volunteers who will be the trained the first aid CPR training. And, of course, one person could get both training, and they obviously can and should if they can do that. There's going to be different aspects of this. There's going to be the legal liability aspects of it. There's going to be the cost of the equipment and training. There's going to be the whole staffing of volunteers and chain of command. It gets to be a pretty complex matter pretty quickly, doesn't it, Jimmy?
Yes, sir, it does. That's one reason why I plan on getting with Chuck and helping between him and myself and a couple of other individuals I know. Dave, who's been working with us with the gun shows, he's a good friend and part of the armed security force at their church. Going to work together and see if we can at least get a flow chart, something simple down that people can print off and take it to their pastor and their deacons. And I would suggest even calling a special business meeting for the church to discuss this. And, the time for waiting for tomorrow and we'll do it next week is over.
Rather than
it's been over a long time. And
to deal with the politics of the church, the pastor needs to meet with the deacons privately first and get a consensus, hopefully unanimous decision with the deacons prior to the general business meeting.
Yes,
that's the way something like this is done. we're going to be kind of all over the map here, ladies and gentlemen, going in different directions. But one of the things that the security force, the armed security force of the church, needs to have an outward visible way to be identified by the first responders, the police and paramedics when they show up, so that the first responders, the ones who do this for a living and draw a paycheck, will know who the good guy is as opposed to the bad guy. Because they're going to, if they see somebody with a gun and they don't know who it is, there could end up being a second tragedy.
Exactly.
So the armed security, the armed security force has to be identified with an article of clothing somehow, some way. And I do this with my security teams all the time. So that just mainly so I can identify them at a distance in a large group, especially in poor lighting conditions. But I want to be able to identify my people instantly from a distance. And the responding police and deputies responding to an active shooter situation, who the security force is by an article of clothing that stands out from everybody else. Looking after the San Bernardino shooting, which was
something as simple as
something inexpensive. I'm not going to publicly state what I believe it should be, because each church needs to make their own decision, and it needs to be distinctive for that church. But following the San Bernardino shooting, which it'll be 2 years ago, this December, I believe, our local community, the chief of police, held a public meeting for all the pastors of all the churches in our community, which is about 16 or 17 churches, and offered to help them set up security for their churches. And I don't know how many. I know several did, but I don't know how many. And I believe after what happened yesterday, it's going to be a nationwide interest in churches having their own security force. We got a break. If you got a question or comment, give us a call. 800-313-9443. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. J.R. Moore here on Monday. It is Monday, the 6th day of November. Visiting with Jimmy Gisling, the proprietor of Desert Eagle Shooters at deserteagleshooter.com. It's going to be a matter that's going to take several months to get everything put properly in place. Your armed security force needs to be properly vetted to make sure that they're qualified to be armed and provide security. That's another advantage of having them get their concealed carry permit, because they've been through a criminal background check prior to getting their concealed carry permit, right, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. And I was thinking about that during the break and what we've been discussing. And I'm kind of working on the fly of how this might work. What I would suggest is that family, gentlemen, ladies, get together, discuss this a little bit, and then with the way politics of churches are now, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want to embarrass anybody or jump over anybody's head or anything like that to cause friction to start with. But a couple of gentlemen go to one of the deacons, discuss it with him, and then go to the pastor and just simply bring it up, discuss it with him, get his input on it and everything, lay the foundation for the pastor and the deacons to discuss it, and then check back with them, find out where they're going with this and everything. Look at now some churches I know of, they've got young men's organizations or church fathers organizations or whatever. Important part is to get input without insult, because there's going to be some that will push against this. They don't need this. God will protect us, everything else. And that's the way it's going to go. You have to deal with them in love and understanding and possibly a bit of frustration. But you've got to have the foundation of the pastor and the deacons first. And once that is starting to come together and there's a positive result on it, if you've got friends that are deputies or the sheriff or paramedics, whatever, discuss it with them and start helping to take the load off of the pastor and the deacons on the planning part, give them suggestions, offer to take over setting up speakers and training and everything else. But the time for sitting back and letting somebody else make the plans and then just participate is over. The more that the congregation can do to assist and help take the load off of others is going to be very, very important. But John brought it up in the very first part, and he kind of just, he touched on it, and then we went on. But I want to back up to his suggestion because it's critical. And you need to have local law enforcement, I would say both police and SO in from the beginning. And the most important part of the whole thing, and this is the part that you you touched on and then went on, John, the first aid and first responder training. Now, that's a double-edged sword, and both of them are good. If the event happens in your church, you're ready. If you're at the park on 4th of July and there's several different church groups and stuff out there and something happens, you're ready. If you're traveling and coming home from vacation or something and sitting at the Denny's in one side and the church across the street, something happens, you're ready.
That's right. Hold that thought, Jimmy. We got a break. The call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back. The 6th day of November. My website is libertyman.com, and we are back, I think. It may seem odd, but we need to conduct normal business, even following a tragedy of the scale we had yesterday. Normal business being the things we do normally every day, 7 days a week. And part of that, of course, is your own health, your own well-being, the levels of energy that you have, the levels of energy you don't have, and that's where the energy cleaner comes in. If you didn't hear Steve Whitman's testimony last Thursday, first hour, go to the archives and listen. Steve Whitman gives me and the energy cleaner personal credit for saving his life. He had the energy, he had the agility, the strength to quickly jump off that backhoe that he was riding and working on to avoid the fourth and fatal shot that would have taken his life. And the energy cleaner gave him the strength and agility to do that. We don't know what life's going to throw at us. We really don't. There's no doubt in my mind that the people attending that church in Texas yesterday morning thought they were going to have a beautiful time worshiping our Lord Jesus and have a wonderful service. It ended up in an absolute horrific tragedy. If you have an energy cleaner and you use it, you're going to have more energy, more strength, more agility, the ability to do the things you need to do. This is my home business, and I would like you to check out the energy cleaner, read the patent application information, and make a decision. Don't procrastinate. Make a decision. Go ahead and get one. Get a mattress pad to go with it, and get on the road to optimal health and well-being. Only $285 shipping included, American zip codes. I do take PayPal, and I do offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Here's that toll-free order line, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We're talking about how to set up a security plan for your church, where you go to church. If you got a question or comment, give us a call at 800-313-9443, visiting with Jimmy Gensling, the proprietor of Desert Eagle Shooters. That's deserteagleshooters.com. Jimmy, you and I aren't the only two talking about this. I'm sure there's pastors and deacons all over the United States having these discussions as we speak this morning, aren't there?
Oh yeah. In fact, I would venture to guess that evening services and lunchtime yesterday is probably where it started. What we were talking about before the break, ladies and gentlemen, is the self-defense side of this is probably, well, we will call that primary. But the second primary on it is going to be the first responder side of it. The first aid, everything. So when you're discussing this and you're talking to those individuals that are going to be either training medical first responders or security first responders, get a list, and I know they're going to have it. All you've got to do is ask for it. In fact, some of them may even be able to provide a source or even some of the components. you're going to want not just basic first aid kits. You're going to want what is called a trauma kit at several different locations in that church.
It depends on the size of the church, and basically the same kit the paramedics carry on their ambulance.
Exactly. Your first aid kit's going to have Band-Aids and cotton swabs and aspirin. Your trauma kit is going to have Israeli bandages, quick clot, large battle bandages, and things like that. All the primary focus is to stop or control bleeding. That is the number one focus on anybody's mind should this incident happen and you're part of it. It's not to be a hero. It's not to do, perform on-site surgery. It's to control bleeding until the paramedics get there. And
control bleeding, keep the heart beating, treat for shock is what you do. I would also, it's got not so much to do with active shooters, but while people are at it, get one of these automatic defibrillator things too, because people do have heart attacks, and there's no reason why they couldn't have a heart attack at church. Just as a little extra thing that these churches could be doing. In addition, there needs to be handheld radios for these people on this security force, so they can communicate with each other and coordinate what they're doing. Right?
Exactly. It's a many-faceted spider web that we're discussing this morning, ladies and gentlemen. You've got the security teams. They have to maintain in contact with each other. At the same time, in the communications part, there needs to be one individual inside the church in that communications network that, while the security side responds, that individual can correlate and work with the pastor and the people inside to make sure that they're ready, take cover, whatever is necessary, however your plan is going to evolve. But the communications aspect, the security, roving security, inside cover points, first responders. One point that I would make heavily, simply because of it seemed like this individual was focusing on children and young people by the number that were targeted in this case. Do not forget your nursery or youth groups in your church, that they should have their own security and their own communications group with them. And that's just part of the fail-safe. What I'd recommend is take a piece of paper and sketch out how your church is. You don't have to be Rembrandt. Just draw it out. And here's the main auditorium. Here are classrooms. This is where the nursery is. This is where the parking lot is. This is where doors are. And start looking at that yourself and formulating things. The reason I say that is when it does come to that point that you're sitting with other parishioners and the pastor and maybe law enforcement or first responders, the longer that you have that laying on your table and you walk by and look at it occasionally and make notes on it. If you have a thought, write it down. Don't trust the memory. Immediately write it down. And then when you're sitting down and discussing this and formulating the plan and starting to work on things, points that you have noticed, you can bring up in the conversation, because the more points that are covered, the less chance there is going to be a problem and a failure with the system. Ladies and gentlemen, this thing should never have happened. We know that. And now we're all dealing with hindsight 2020. So today's Monday. 2 days, most churches are going to have a Wednesday service or a Thursday service. Be ready between now and then to bring this up and discuss it, and start, don't just walk in and take over the prayer meeting, please, ladies and gentlemen. Discuss it with your pastor and your deacons before then. Don't let it go till next Sunday, because if you let it go till next Sunday, then it'll go to the next Sunday, and it'll be the next Sunday. Today, sit down and start thinking about this. Make your phone calls. Talk to the deacons. Talk to the pastor. You've got to come up with a plan. And I just got a text a few moments ago, John. A couple of individuals I mentioned earlier are already in gear on it. So hopefully by the end of the week we'll have at least a flow chart or a basic planning program written in writing, and we'll have Tim put it in PDF, so all anybody has to do is just print it, and they'll be able to have that hat in hand to go and discuss this with the members of their church. But don't let the sun set on this, ladies and gentlemen. We need to all do this now and continue, because with the way this world is going right now, it's all I can see is escalation, John. What do you see?
Well, there's a lot to this. In fact, there was another church shooting yesterday in California that is not making the news. 2 people shot in a parking lot, 1 dead, and I only seen one article, and it didn't really give any resolution to what happened out there. It was out there in Fresno, in California. But I see these matters continuing, and a lot of this goes back to a decision that was made about 1969, 1970. And I talk about this usually regarding the homeless problem, but this is what happened in that time frame. The psychological professionals reached an agreement with the government to no longer provide housing and institutionalize people with psychiatric problems. They decided that here's the decision they made instead was to diagnose a person who had schizophrenia or whatever they might have, put them on a medication, and then put them back in the general population. Prior to that time, they were kept locked up where they could cause no harm to themselves or somebody else. And what that did in 1970, and I might be off by a year one way or the other, was instantly create a nationwide homeless problem. Because the people making these decisions, they thought that people with mental disorders would behave like people who don't have mental disorders, when they were absolutely wrong, of course. People who have mental and psychiatric problems don't behave as normal people do. So instead of people taking their money they were given to provide housing for themselves, they just took the money and lived on the streets, which created the homeless problem. And what we're seeing also is people who have emotional psychiatric problems being given medications instead of being locked up, which is what we did for most of all the decades, many decades, more than a century prior to about 1970. Many of these mass shooters prior to 1970 would have been locked up where they couldn't hurt themselves or somebody else. And that was a basic fundamental change in our society when we started diagnosing and prescribing psychotropic drugs instead of locking up people who could harm themselves or others. We have a caller on hold here, Jimmy. We got Ty in Austin. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Ty. I was hoping you would call today.
Oh, well, thank you. What a horrible thing to be talking about, but thanks for taking the call. I just got back from this was going on when I was halfway through a 3-day class this weekend that was focused on close quarter concepts, retention shooting, grappling, these types of things with the firearm. And I got to thinking while you're talking about how to get around these killings at these churches and beef up security and all that. For me, I would want first contact outside the building if at all possible. But not every church is going to be able to have multiple people outside and inside. It may just be one guy. But that guy or guys or gals, after the class I just took, and I'm not going to bore you with the after-action report today. Ask me whatever you want and I'll tell you. But that first contact better be able to take a hit, to get up off the ground, to get their gun back, to disarm. If they're not familiar with those things and they're just a good shooter and a big dude comes up on them that at 60, 70 pounds outweighs them, you're done. You're done, and you're useless if you can't hold on to your gun and wrestle with the guy and have some basic judo and Greco-Roman wrestling skills to get yourself out of holds and create space so that you can get that firearm out and start doing work on the sights. So, I don't know, I think that's a piece that doesn't get talked about, and it hit me like a ton of bricks this weekend when I realized how vulnerable you become once someone's on you. And the fight is not at a square range shooting at a paper target. It's at a man moving and swarming you. So whoever's going to be that first contact and those guys that are security, I encourage those people to take it to the next level and get some training like that. It may save their life.
I agree. Police officers in the police academy. Go ahead, Jimmy. I was going to say police officers, when they're going through the police academy, typically get around 16 to 18 hours of martial arts training. And it's not a whole lot, but that's considered adequate for police officers who are getting their commission. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Ty, if you could make some notes on that, what you just discussed, and email it to me today, because I've got a couple other questions I wanted to bounce off of you, being down in that part of the country. And, yeah, Ty brings up something, ladies and gentlemen, that 99.995% of us fail to consider. I'm not going to say forget, and I'm not going to, we just fail to consider it. The grappling part. If the individual comes and he's got evil in his heart, and his intention is to either harm someone in the church or at Walmart or in the parking lot or wherever you are, if they don't have a weapon and they know or they perceive that you do, they're going to want to take yours. So that is such an excellent point, Ty, that I didn't think about. Now, it was running through my mind about the body armor and the protecting of the outside rovers. But
Hold that thought. Right. We have a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 6th day of November, visiting Jimmy Gensling, the proprietor of Desert Eagle Shooters. That's deserteagleshooters.com. Well, Jimmy, there's obviously going to be a firearms component to these church security teams, which would involve typically handguns, possibly shotguns, ammunition, magazines, holsters, optical devices, and related things. Are those things that you could help these teams with, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. And I'm already kind of making some notes on that. Ladies and gentlemen, keep an eye on a section of the webpage over there, the forums side, and be aware that you can use that yourself. You don't have to wait for me or someone else to post. on that forum side. And I'm already working on, started kind of like yesterday afternoon at the gun show with a couple of folks, working on some different things that I'm going to try to put up there and get set up. People can copy and paste and pull it down and print it. I would like to talk to you later on. Drop me an email if you can. We're almost at the top of the hour. But, John, this took everybody by surprise so badly, and I was just thinking about it, and it shouldn't have. We've seen it happen before.
I wasn't surprised, but I was very disappointed and sad. A technical question for you, Jimmy. Are the Glazer safety slugs still being manufactured and sold?
Writing that down as we speak. I will look at it. I know about a year and a half ago they became very, very difficult to get on that.
Or if there's a similar...
one of the rounds that we've been ordering in for people for that reload are the Lehigh component. They're actually a machined copper bullet, and the way they're designed, they open up into like flower petals on impact.
Well, that's a different direction. The laser safety slugs are basically meant to put all their energy into the initial target without penetrating the target, going all the way through and hurting an innocent person behind. They were used by the air marshals, I know, a lot, but I don't know if they're still being manufactured or not. It's basically I would characterize as birdshot in a protective capsule to get it through the pistol.
Right, and well, that's also another option that people can use is the reloaded snake shot, bird shot capsules, and that for penetration problems or to alleviate over penetration. A few things that I'll make some notes on and see if next hour we can sit there and walk into that a little bit more and discuss it a little bit better as far as the rounds to carry.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do some homework myself here real quick during the break and see what's available. We have a top of the hour break. Ty, thank you for the call, and we'll be back after the break. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Monday, the 6th day of November. Your preparative of the day is also our discussion of the day. I want all of you to consider working with your pastor, deacons of your church, to set up a church security program. To that end, we have our regular Monday morning guest, that is Jimmy Gensling with Desert Eagle Shooters at deserteagleshooters.com. Before we get to our first caller, Jimmy, some quick homework here. I did the company Corbon, that's Corbon, that's Core-Bon up in Sturgis, South Dakota. They're manufacturing the Glazer ammunition, and apparently, as best I can tell, it's still in production. So that's a good thing.
If you could, John, do me a favor and email that link to me, and I'll make a personal contact to them and see if I can get around the normal.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll do that. Our first caller this hour is Dan in Hawaii. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Dan.
Hi, John.
Coming up yet?
Hi. What I'm wondering about is outside the church, inside the church, what type of weapon are we talking about here? We're talking about semi-auto best in the church. We're talking about revolvers. What's ideal here?
Well, you're going to get two answers on this, one from myself and one from John. One, concealable, that's primary, so that's going to bring it down to a handgun. And always my answer to the second part of the question is what the shooter or what the security person is comfortable with operating. You don't want to, in my opinion, relegate this type of weapon, that type of weapon, whatever. You want your security teams to use whatever weapon it is that they're proficient and comfortable with. Your thoughts, John?
It's going to be a mixed bag. You're going to have enthusiastic volunteers who barely have any knowledge of how to properly handle a firearm, and you're going to have current and prior law enforcement, current and prior military, who are very familiar with various types of firearms, and it's for us to prognosticate on a radio show what's best for a church in New York City as opposed to a church in South Dakota we can't do that, really. It's going to be up to the hopefully there will be local law enforcement and NRA instructors like myself providing guidance to the church as to what's most suitable. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to get to your question there, Dan.
That's the answer right there, no one size. So it relegates down to what individual proficiency.
Right, and the church may decide they want commonality of calibers and magazines. They go with semi-automatics for obvious reasons. That may or may not be an issue, but it's going to be a decision of the based on the advice of trained professionals such as law enforcement, NRA instructors, as to what decision they go, what direction they go there, Dan.
I see. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dan.
Any follow-up there, Jim?
You.
Any follow-up, Jim, before we go to our next caller?
No, the way you worded that was so perfect, John, on that. And you brought it up and put it in. The way these security measures, security plans, they're going to evolve. You're going to get a basic plan, working with law enforcement, first responders, everything else. And 6 months down the line, it's going to evolve a little bit. And then it's probably going to evolve again. And as long as the evolution in the teams and everything is kept at a point of sit down, discuss it, have a meeting, discuss changes, implement changes, rather than each individual decide they don't like the way things work and make changes on their own, that's where all security planning I've ever dealt with fails. Right there is that whoever makes up your security teams and everything have to understand that there will be a set way of doing things. And the reason, ladies and gentlemen, for that set way of doing things is not for one man to be, okay, I'm in charge, it's my way or the highway. It's, we set this up this way so you know what, okay, Fred knows what Bob is supposed to do and how, and by observing him knows how he does it. And Bob knows how Jeff reacts and what he's supposed to do. If you keep it simple and you keep it to the point in your training and everything and your discussions of this, that everybody knows what everybody else is supposed to do, then things will run more fluid. Now, right. That has a caveat to it that is very beneficial. Say Tom and Fred are outside and Jerry is supposed to come through the door to assist or back up or something, and the guys outside already know that everybody is aware of this and what's going on, and Jerry doesn't show up, that automatically tells them that one of two things happened. Either Jerry is down or he's been delayed. Either way, it requires investigation. Right.
And there's a saying in the Army, the more you bleed, more you train on the training field, the less you bleed on the battlefield. Let's go to our next caller here, Jimmy. We got Glenn in Philadelphia. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Jimmy. Good morning, John. Hi. John, I have some laser safety slugs from the 90s, I think, that are still around. They used to make the blue cap one, the blue tip ones for civilians, and they had a hotter red tip round for law enforcement. And I went looking online and a few years ago, and the manufacturer and stuff, unable to find them. Even if they're manufactured, I'm wondering if they're making them available strictly to law enforcement now or something, because retail.
I'm looking at their website right now as we speak in real time, and they're still being manufactured. They're still being sold. They have.
Are they very good to know?
They have blue which has number 12 lead shot for warm weather climates, and silver with number 6 lead shot for colder climates. So it has more penetration power for people wearing heavy jackets and coats and things of that nature.
Right.
They're still available, and
very good. I could not I could not find them like a year and a half ago.
Well, I initially looked at Wiki Arms, and I only found one box of 38s on Wiki Arms, but the company is still manufacturing them and are still being sold.
Like Techron or something like that. Yeah, I think it is.
Initially, in 1974, the target market was sky marshals, and myself and two of my buddies from I served in Vietnam with, we all three of us looked at becoming sky marshals, and none of us decided to go that route. But that's when the sky marshal program began.
Right.
Was around 1972 or so.
Right. Yeah, it really stinks if you fire a gun on an airplane and everybody goes flying out to the hole in the side. That's bad. But the lasers are known for being like they used to call them a surgeon's nightmare, because once they go in and all those little pellets disperse throughout the tissues, it's like it's a real nightmare situation. But my local gun shop sold me some Hornady FX rounds as a temporary substitute, and those are a more highly frangible round, like Jimmy was talking about, and devastating, hit there. And again, they spread out somewhat, but not like the little pellets and the glazers.
Right.
About this church thing with security, there'll be an interesting divide, John, between the liberals and the conservatives, because the liberal churches, like your Lutherans and Presbyterians and stuff, will be hesitant to implement security strategies involving deacons or ushers, carrying guns and that sort of thing. The evangelicals are much more likely to be, the right-wingers are more likely to be very receptive, and I'm sure some have already implemented such measures.
Oh, they have.
In these larger churches, in these churches where they have, 3 services of 600 people shot, and they've got a small, small little cadre, good-sized cadre of ushers and deacons and stuff. They could actually, station their men 2 by 2 at the various entrances, and then he'd have to be less worried about someone trying to grapple with a large person and break free. If you got 2 guys, watching each other's back, that idea of them being snuck up upon is very much less likely.
That's true.
And these shooters tend to go after the evangelicals, and the evangelicals tend to be more Second Amendment people. So I think we're going to see a lot of activity in this realm, as you've been talking about. So, all right, John, thanks. All right, Jimmy.
Thanks for the call. Day. Okay, any follow-up there, Jimmy, on Glenn's comments?
No. The point that, ladies and gentlemen, you need to make is Glenn used it there, and it was the word I was trying to think of a while ago. If you are looking for home defense or rounds to load in your handgun and everything for the church or wherever else, the key word is frangible. And what that means, the bullet is designed on first contact with anything to start coming apart. The purpose is that if you in the case of over-penetration, the bullet, you shoot a person and the bad guy, and it passes through muscle tissue on his arm and continues on through, then you've got the problem of over-penetration of hitting the wall and then injuring someone on the other side of the wall. And I did some very extensive testing several years ago on that, and actually videotaped some of it and a few other things. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be amazed at how far a bullet will go penetrating walls. On this very point right there, in part of the testing I did, I used 5.56, 300 blackout, and then in the handguns I used 940 and 45. John, a standard 45 hollow point will go through 3 drywall walls, 2x4s drywall on either side. It will penetrate 3 of those, and then on the 4th, which I used as being the outside wall of the house with a layer of brick on the other side, penetrated that one and still had not fully expanded. So, ladies and gentlemen,
that doesn't surprise me.
Over-penetration is something to consider.
Well, it is. And I was witness to a accidental discharge in Vietnam where I handed my 1911 to a sergeant who improperly cleared it, pointed at a wall. The wall was typical Vietnamese commercial construction at the time, hollow clay tile blocks with about a half-inch plaster on each side. The slug, it was regular 240 grain military issue 45 ammo. It went right through that wall, through the next room, which had 4 GIs sitting on 2 bunks facing each other talking, and buried itself in the next wall. This even pistol ammunition is incredibly powerful, let alone rifle ammunition. And over-penetration is a definite and very real concern, especially in that kind of close confines of a church where you've got a lot of people all jammed up together. It is a very real concern, nothing to be taken lightly.
Because, in church, you've got the added component that somewhere in that church, and it's going to be connected to the main auditorium one way or the other. Some churches have a room where mother with a baby that's upset or something like that or needs to be cared for and all can set off to the side and still hear the services. Nurseries, all kinds of things that are on the other side of the wall in a church. And so that's adding a new component for our church security teams to consider. Outside in the parking lot, over-penetration would not be as much of a concern. I'll put it that way. It's always a concern, but inside, you're going to have to definitely have that thought in the back of your mind. And again, that's going to come into the training and the pre-planning that the church is going to come up with. So there's so many avenues on this, John. And what is it? I guess it's us being on Monday. We've dealt with, I think, 3 incidents now that things have happened on the weekend, and you and I get up in the morning, and whatever we were going to discuss has been preempted by some lunatic, some moron, doing something very, very stupid and selfish.
Right. Well, that's the way, that's just simply the way it is. And I believe our job as radio talk show hosts here, Jimmy, is to discuss matters of concern. This is obviously a clear and present danger. These incidents just keep happening over and over again. And personally, Jimmy, I say enough is enough. It's time for the pastors, the deacons to step up to the plate, do the right thing, and make sure that these churches are going to be safe. Now, the tragedy yesterday was a wake-up call to the heartland, is what it was. I know where I go to church in Viburnum, Missouri, people will say, Oh, nothing like that would ever happen out here. Well, Byrne, Missouri has 200 more people in it than this town in Texas did. It's a small place, relatively rural. Here's our next break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 6th day of November, visiting with Jimmy Ginsling, the proprietor of Desert Eagle Shooters, deserteagleShooters.com. Jimmy, we got a regular caller on hold here. We got Rick in Missouri. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. Good morning, Jimmy. Good morning, John. Hey, with respect to the gorilla in the room, not that it is necessarily germane, but it was the 5th of November, and not that this cretin would have known. Well, I say that, and then yet it seems that certain groups are always inserting subliminal dates into things, and they always want to have an event. They always want to have an event that has some sort of numerical significance. The 5th of November, of course, is one of my all-time favorite dates. It's the date of the Gunpowder Revolution, Guy Fawkes, the Guy Fawkes Mask. Remember, the 5th of November,
right.
Gunpowder, treason and plot, that kind of thing. I don't know that this was connected at all, but I would not necessarily say that it was not. And as far as church goes, I go every Sunday, and it actually makes my stomach churn thinking about carrying. If I go to the pastor and bring it up, and he says, "No, I got a problem," and
right.
What is it, permission and forgiveness situation. So I'm going to have to give this some very, very serious thought. I guess maybe I'm thinking I might carry. It's just a shame, though, isn't it? I mean, when you really think about it, when you really.
Rick, when I started attending the church I'm currently going to, I approached the pastor, and we'd already known each other for a short period of time. And I said, "Pastor,
right.
Missouri statute requires that I get your permission prior to my carrying concealed in your church." And he basically said, "I think it's a dandy thing. You should do so, John."
That's right.
But that's right. That's going to vary from church to church.
It will.
Yeah, and. That's Missouri law, that the person
right.
in charge of the church or in charge of church security has to grant permission to carry concealed in the confines of the church. And that's Missouri statute on one hand. On the other, if you carry without permission and there's an incident and you use that firearm to protect an innocent life, you're obviously not going to get in trouble.
Well, and if there is an incident, sure, yeah, and if there's an incident and you decided not to carry, I don't know how you ever get over that one either. You know, it's really not a very, it's just a lose-lose deal there, but I'm going to have to give this some very serious thought over the next week.
Right. There was a female chiropractor at Ludi's Cafe there, I think it's called, in Texas. They had a Texas concealed carry permit that didn't carry her firearm. Or she had a pistol, but didn't carry it into the restaurant where she was meeting her parents for lunch because Texas law didn't allow her to. And both her mother and father both died in that incident.
Oh. Yep.
And she's
yep,
become
I see
Susan.
Yeah, there you go.
Susan, her name is Susan, I believe. And she became a big Second Amendment person and eventually ended up getting elected to the Texas state legislature as a consequence of that tragedy, where she followed the law because she thought it was the right thing to do, and both her parents died when she could have possibly done some good if she'd had her pistol with her instead of in the glove box of her car.
Right. There are those incidents where common sense and the law just seem to intersect at 90-degree angles, and you really do have to, put on your thinking cap and give it some thought. What is the best thing to do? And it's not always to follow the letter of the law. It's just sometimes it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, anyway, you guys, I'm enjoying the show.
Right. Well, thank you, Rick. I heard a number of witnesses in that Texas town yesterday, Jimmy, making statements to the effect, if I can paraphrase, that these things happen in big cities, not in small town America. And I believe up until yesterday, many people had that same feeling, didn't they, Jimmy?
Oh, yes, sir. I don't know. It's one of these things, ladies and gentlemen, that it's no longer New York. It's no longer St. Louis. It's no longer Chicago.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I offer energy cleaners for sale at my website. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go to my website, thelibertyman.com. Educate yourself about these marvelous healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation and getting a great night's sleep. Arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. Energy cleaners, $285, shipping included to American zip codes. You can educate yourself all about the energy cleaner right there at my website, the patent application, the wonderful testimonials. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. Now, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I have a toll-free order line, or you can order it right at my website at thelibertyman.com. The toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 6th day of November. My website is a lot of tactical-related equipment for sale at my website under John's Survival and Tactical Gear. I'm working with my webmaster, Tim Spencer, to get different items consolidated so that like items are listed with like items. There's a lot. There's probably 200 or more products. Many of them are tactical related that might be helpful for your tactical team. So check that out. Of course, also at my website are energy cleaners. This is my home business. When you place your order, the guy that boxes them up into the little country post office at Cherryville, Missouri, puts them on the counter, and they get shipped out priority mail. The mattress pad the same way. I'm the guy that can be compatible with the energy cleaner. A great combination. I use mine every night. I sleep like a rock. I could probably get by with 6 hours sleep. I go ahead and sleep 7.5 hours. If you want a great night's sleep, get yourself an energy cleaner. If you have arthritis pain, get yourself an energy cleaner. Don't procrastinate. Just get yourself one, and you'll be very, very glad you did. Only $285 shipping included. Keep in mind, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee with the energy cleaner, so you're risking nothing. I do take PayPal. MasterCard, Visa, PayPal now takes payments if you're in this country and you spread out that dollar over a few months. PayPal is the most secure way to make any payment online. And, of course, I have a toll-free order line 24 hours a day. Don't try to call me. Toll-free order line, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Okay. I'm getting a note that my connection is having an issue. So we'll reconnect. Jimmy, why don't you carry the show here for about 2 minutes while I disconnect and reconnect here?
All right, sir. I was just beginning to wonder if that was my phone or not. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about is this shooting over the weekend and yesterday, and how the guy basically walked in, for all intents and purposes, to the sheep pen and commenced the slaughter. The one point about this shooter that it struck me, the whole thing struck me, but the one point that struck my wife Teresa so viciously hard was the fact that this guy, this beast, this monster, focused on and targeted children. From some of the early reports and other things, it seems like that was one of his motives. I have found out that he was court-martialed in, of all places, New Mexico, Holloman Air Force Base, right across the hills from us, about 120 miles to the west of us. And he was court-martialed for beating his wife and child. Beating his child. That God's got to have a special place in hell for people like this.
Right, right. Well, I'm back, Jimmy. Men beating their wives is a horrendous situation. It happens far too often. But a man that beats his wife and his child is extraordinarily horrendous and rarely happens compared to the men who typically these are alcohol-related tirades fueled by alcohol and or drugs. But most wife beaters will not also beat their children. That's an extra level of brutality there.
Yeah, and it according to the note that just came up on my computer and everything about this guy, John, you and I were both in the military. We've got a lot of friends that were in the military. Can you imagine the horrendousness, if that is a word, of his actions to be court-martialed, reduced in rank, and dishonorably discharged?
Well, these things, right, and that, that's a big heads up on who this person is. I'm now reading that the shooter did in fact commit suicide, is what they're now claiming.
Well, either way, ladies and gentlemen, we're discussing the church situation and protection and armed security for your church. Our sales in body armor, especially the discreet body armor, is going up, and we were discussing yesterday with one of the sheriff's deputies from Roswell at the gun show. If we would have mentioned, if you and I were sitting in your cafe there, John, 10 years ago, talking and discussing how children are going to have ballistic panels and everything in their backpacks to go to school, right. And teachers were going to have body armor or ballistic panels on their desk, they'd have hauled both you and me out and locked us up. And if we'd have talked about shootings in a church or something, it would have automatically gone to, the Civil War era, the War of Northern Aggression, the black churches being attacked and things like that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about 2017 in Texas, rural Texas, and what happened? It's like I'm Rumpelstiltskin. I just woke up and I'm trying to figure out what happened to the world. But that's the world we're in, ladies and gentlemen. So you do need to sit down. You've got to discuss this with your deacons, with your pastor, and you've got to find out what their plans are and what their intentions are, and then work with them. Don't give them the idea. Don't go in there and bring it up and say that you're concerned and this and that and everything else. Hand them a box full of problems and then walk off. That is how we got into this situation. Everybody complains about politics. Everybody complains about this law or that law. But when it comes down to actually doing something, too many people say, well, they'll take care of it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to take care of it. I'm not talking about an insurrection in your church and a church split and taking over and all this other stuff. I'm talking about discuss it, discuss options, but most of all, when the pastor looks at you and says, do you have any ideas or can you help, you be the first one to stand up and say yes. And I don't care if you're an 80-year-old grandma, if you're a 19-year-old first-year freshman college student. I don't care if you're 15 years old. Your eyes and your ability to watch and notice things out of the ordinary is just as valuable as anyone's. So we cannot, in good faith, put this situation out. John and I have been for an hour and a half with callers discussing what happened and discussing solutions, plans, otherwise. That's great. What we have to do is not only provide ideas and write things down, we have to be there when the deacon says, will you? And don't even let them complete the statement. Just as soon as they say, Jimmy, will you, just say yes. Because that's what God expects of us. And the salvation that He offered us and we freely took when we accepted Him, we should never let God complete the sentence. It should always be yes. And it should be with the deacons or with the pastor or whoever is working this program. Don't let them complete the sentence. Just look them in the eye and say yes. And when they look at you and say, well, I haven't even told you what I want you to do, look at them and say, it must be important or you wouldn't be asking, so the answer is yes.
Right.
And
right.
That helps, ladies and gentlemen. The time of sitting back and waiting for others is over. It ended. And start planning, start talking to your church, start looking at avenues of protection, start researching. Like I said, in fact, I got a note a while ago from Chuck that he's going to help me put together some planning. I'm going to discuss this with my friend Kerry because I believe that his church has, I don't know if it's it's contingency plans or anything, but I think that they actually have something formulated. So all the information that I build up, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be over on the forum. You don't have to search for it. You can go right there. You can look at it. You can read it. You can print it, whatever. But, John, the whole world changed yesterday morning, didn't it?
Well,
for America.
The perception of the whole world changed. My reality that I've had for decades is now becoming more mainstream. Something that's going on right now is people attempting to find a motive, and I've seen this many times since I've been investigating crimes professionally. It's 1973, 44 years. Logical, rational people attempt to determine why a person who has no logic and has no reason, is mentally disturbed, would do something. And it's a loop that can't be resolved many times. I think there will be resolution in this case in particular, but many times there's not going to be any resolution in attempting to determine why a person who, as I typically say, has a loose grip on reality would do something. We've all seen the headlines, man or woman murdered over $10. Well, the reporter writing it and the people reading it can't understand why somebody would murder someone over $10. Well, they're using their logic and their reason to determine why a mentally disturbed person would do something. That doesn't work. You just end up in a loop of logic that has no end. In this particular case, it appears the shooter had former in-laws that had occasionally attended church at this particular church, and that appears to be the motivation for this mentally disturbed young man to do what he did. In my opinion, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is that any church, anywhere, is a potential target, and that's the bottom line, in my opinion. Trying to make a determination that a church has a higher or lower profile of being attacked is a fool's errand, in my opinion. What do you think, Jimmy?
Oh, perfectly, John. What is to have prevented this person to be driving there and stop to get coffee at McDonald's and turned around and heard the singing from a church next door and decided to do that one?
Right.
Driving along and see some pastor's billboard up there that, God loves you and wants to talk to you, drop by Sunday. I just like that one. That's one that we've got on the road to Albuquerque.
Right.
But
right.
It could have been anywhere that he did this. Now, having a link to it adds another avenue for investigation. But the simple fact that it happened, ladies and gentlemen, in small town USA, small town Texas, the perception, as John put it, that's a much better word, by the way. Thank you, sir. The perception of the world has just been knocked off kilter. So now is the time that we need to discuss this. Now is the time that we need to formulate ideas and plans. And even if your state doesn't require it, even if ordinance isn't a determining factor, I agree with John, or what John said a while ago, what he did. He went to his pastor and said, "Excuse me, I'm going to be attending your church. Do you mind if I carry my gun?" And the pastor's response. It's courtesy, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it's also statutory. It's not just courtesy.
In Missouri,
it's
yes,
statutory.
it's statutory.
Right.
And
Missouri statutes mimic the statutes of probably 36 or 38 of the 50 states. They're not all consistent, but there's a lot of commonality between the 50 states.
Yes, and but I think, I just thought about something, John, that word I just used, courtesy. I think that's how we got here. people don't know the word. They weren't raised with it. These children that we see nowadays, opening the door for my wife going into Walmart and two 14-year-old kids basically cut in front and one kind of pushes her out of the way. Excuse me. There was almost an incident that day. But courtesy for our fellow man, for our neighbor, for everything, I think has died, if not its on life support. Courtesy, compassion, common sense. We've got to work together on this, ladies and gentlemen. If we can be of any help on it, if you need advice on, like we were discussing earlier, ammo, training, whatever. If my wife, myself, Desert Eagle Shooters, if we can be of any assistance at all, even finding, if you need to talk to somebody and for information and you can't find them, maybe we can. We will try. But, ladies and gentlemen, the webpage is deserteagleshooters.com. The phone number is 575-513-2842. Email is on the webpage. If not, just do it direct, Jimmy, Jimi, at hdc-nm.com. We will help. If we don't have the answer, we will find someone that does. But it's just incredible, John. It's that whole mood yesterday in that gun show. Once people realized what everyone was talking about, it became, you could see the pain, you could see the thoughts, forming and starting to work. You could just feel the change in that gun show just because of the news.
I bet you could. I'm sure it was a very somber atmosphere there.
And we had.
Here's our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Monday, the 6th day of November, visiting with Jimmy Gensling with Desert Eagle Shooter. That's deserteagleshooters.com. And I have a high level of confidence that the not-too-distant future, you're going to be a dealer for Corbin Glaser safety slugs, aren't you, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. We're going to be working on that as soon as the show's over. And also, John, I have a very special announcement for all of our listeners today. And so it's breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. As of Thursday of this week, my bride of 29-plus years will be officially retiring. So she will be able to devote more time with me to the business and taking care of our customers, and most importantly, keep me pointed in the right direction and nudging me on a regular basis. So I just thought I'd let everybody know that, because you may not realize it. I know our listeners don't, but she listens in the background. She's always given me constructive input and everything, and quite often the much-needed jabs in the ribs and a few giggles. So, ladies and gentlemen, just, keep her in her prayers, give her a good kudos up to the Lord and everything. She's obviously and definitely deserves this, and we're looking at a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful news. We're down to the last minute here, Jimmy, and I want to encourage all our listeners to initiate these conversations with their pastors and their deacons to implement a security plan for these churches. There's been some instances where church security has stopped these shootings in the last several years, and that needs to become the norm, a norm to the point where they just cease happening. That's my goal. How about you, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. And the amazing part about it, ladies and gentlemen, is you probably did never hear about these incidents where good guy with a gun prevented someone from doing something very, very horrendous like this. Go figure. But next week, we'll discuss it more. We'll bring up some new topics. I'll hopefully have some better information for everybody. And let's take our country back again, ladies and gentlemen, and let's keep our churches, our families, and our neighborhoods safe. That's
Absolutely.
the only thing that we can hope and pray for.
Absolutely. Jimmy, I want to thank you for being with us, and look forward to having you back next week.
All right, sir. You guys have a great weekend, and all of our listeners, go out and have a beautiful day, hug your children, kiss your wife, and just praise God that you live in the United States of America.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jimmy. Okay. Well, I hope we did some good here today. I believe we did, and I hope you all will move forward with our suggestion. In the meantime, get your medical supplies, your energy cleaner, your essential oils now while you can. Your firearms ammunition. Never ever give up your guns. Have a fun, safe, productive day, and God bless America.